You are listening to Radiant Creators, a collaborative project composed of people whose passion, purpose, and dedication requires forging their own unique path of empowerment and livelihood. A Radiant Creator isn't making a living, they are living.
We interview inspiring people to inspire others, really, especially the entrepreneurial type, people who are making their own way in the world the way that they want to. As Joseph Campbell would say, following their bliss, you know. And then we're just trying to share that inspiration that individuals have with others, with the masses, you might say, or our listeners. So really it's not so much always what you do, but it's how you do it. And so you're an inspiring figure because your bio says investor, entrepreneur, and speaker, and you do quite a lot. And something that intrigues us for sure is that you're doing well financially now, but you've definitely gone through some struggle along the way. So could we talk about, well, I guess how you got to where you are and how you, when things got difficult, how you kept going?
Yeah, I'd love to. The whole reason I do what I do.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, let's start with. Let's see. I'm sorry to. So yeah, you are actually.
Are we gonna do this all in one take, or do you go and edit it later, or what?
Oh, I can edit it later. Usually, if we have some breaks, I'll edit it later. Like we've had some breaks already, so I'll have to.
And you do the video, or is it just gonna be only audio?
It's usually video. And then we also have audio only. So, okay. So some people watch us on YouTube and BitChute, and then some people just listen to us on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, etc.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So let me actually get to that first question. Yeah. So I guess let's just start with tell us about yourself. Who is Mark Moss?
Are you on Instagram real quick?
I am not on Instagram, but I'm on Twitter.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we're on Twitter, I think, already.
Yeah, all right, perfect.
Just a little live, well, I'll just grab a little clip or whatever. I mean, at some point, whatever, now. Okay, cool. Well, let's do it. We're ready.
All right.
How long are we going to go for?
Probably just till about 3 or a few minutes after. I know you got to get going. You're scheduled.
3, is it 2 right now?
It's 2. It's 2:13 here, yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, cool. Let's do it.
All right. Well,
I'm in California, so it's 1.
Yeah, and so here it's 2. Yeah. All right. Well, Mark Moss, thanks for being on Radiant Creators today. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you came to be Mark Moss, and then we'll get a little bit deeper into the story of how you kept going when things got difficult.
Well, how I got to where I am today. You know, it's an interesting question. I think back a lot on, really, especially being a father trying to raise kids, right? Like. I believe that success leaves clues. So you follow other successful people and hopefully you have the same results or similar results, right? So like, how could I recreate this for my kids? But I'm not going to go all the way back, but I would say I was raised in like my dad was a contractor. So he was, you know, a self-employed person. So I guess I kind of had some of that like entrepreneurial spirit maybe from growing up. But really I started I only ever had one job. I worked for him, and then I hated working construction. And so when I was in high school, I started working for my friend's dad's company. It was an engineering company, and I just started sweeping the floors and taking out the trash. Over about 6 years, I just continued to increase my skills and provide more value to my employer, and I worked my way all the way up. The company got sold over and over. It became a publicly traded company, hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue, and I became the trade show manager. So I started traveling the country doing marketing, and I was only like 21 years old. And I was making pretty good money, you know, like 50 grand a year, but I realized I was maxed out in the role that I was in. And I looked at like the vice presidents and the president of this massive, you know, public company, and, you know, they're making 100 grand or 200 grand, which is good money. But I just realized, like, is that my limit? Like, that's my ceiling. And I didn't have the pedigree that these guys had, so I didn't even know if that would be possible. But even if it was, like, just knowing that was where my ceiling was, I wasn't happy with that. So I'd kind of like maxed out on what I could do there, and so I started trying to find a way to provide more value. And in 1995, I got started in my first investing endeavor, and that was investing in real estate. And so in California, we had this big real estate crash from 89 to 92. By 1995, the banks were sitting on all these foreclosures, and they were just trying to get rid of them any way they could. So I was able to buy like a bank foreclosure for zero down, and but I didn't even have money for closing costs. I didn't have money for rehab. So I got a buddy. We cobbled what we could together. I was working full time. I had to commute an hour from my full time job to this house, and I worked there every night and every weekend for 6 months. But we ended up fixing that place up and selling it, and I made more on that deal than I had made at my job in a year. And I was like, okay, like we're on to something here, you know? So of course I want to do more and more. And so that began my real estate investing career, and I continued doing that. And in about 10 years, I had built that up into like a $20 million real estate portfolio. Also, while I was still at my employer, they were manufacturing high-tech medical equipment. And I just realized there was this whole segment of the market that they weren't serving. And I just realized like there was this whole segment of the market that needed value. There was a value creation play. And so I started a side hustle providing value to that segment of the market. And within about 6 months, I had built that up to equal my full-time pay. So within about 6 months, I had created enough income on my real estate and in the side job to basically double my full-time salary. And I quit my job. And I've never had a job since. I was 23 or 22. I don't know, 21, 22, somewhere in there. And I've never had a job since. And I've just always created value. I've created multiple businesses, have a Fortune 500 exit, but really that real estate play is kind of what you wanted to talk about. And I managed to build it up to about a $20 million empire. I sold my business to Fortune 500 exit, put it all into real estate. I thought I was super smart. I was killing it. Right. And 2008 came around and the market crash happened and wiped me out. And, I think at that point, 28, 29, married, just had my first baby. I was basically retired, sold my businesses, had this huge real estate empire. I thought I was set for life. And then next thing you know, I'm not just broke, but I'm millions of dollars in debt. And just like I said, just with a new baby and like, what the heck? like what the heck just happened, right? So that was a pretty serious problem for me to be in, you know?
Yeah. So, and there was a video that you did recently, a YouTube called "Quit My Job 50,000." Yeah, I quit my 50,000 job with these money. No, was that it? With these money hacks? I think so. There's a video that you did recently, and something that you mentioned
yesterday. Just went up last night. Yeah.
Yeah, and something that you mentioned was, or kind of a theme of that video was the importance of getting away from the hourly wage and getting paid for your value. So it seems like it was really early on in life that you got away from the hourly wage and got into more of the, really truly getting paid for value.
Yeah, and I think that's like the most important thing, and like really like that's like the one thing I really want to spread because, the education system is really failing people. The world has changed really drastically over the last 10 years. The internet's 10 years old now. The iPhone's 10 years old. The internet's older, but the iPhone's 10 years old, so the internet has really started taking off with that. And really just the last couple of years, we're starting to see it happening. And if people think the internet's changed the world, like it's just now about to happen. And the education system hasn't caught up and it's not teaching people the right way. And we're really seeing it hard and heavy right now where people are starting to attack rich people pretty bad. And now it's like almost bad to be rich. And how dare these people? They're just stealing from the poor, right? But that's because they don't understand how the world works and how money's created, right? You don't get paid for your hours. I mean, sure, your job may calculate your pay based off the amount of hours you bring, but why do they pay you? They pay you for the amount of value that you're providing. So if I'm working at McDonald's and I'm pushing keys on a cash register, how much value am I providing? I'm providing value to that one customer of helping him get his order in. But he'd probably rather just punch the keys into a computer on his own and just do it through an iPad. He probably didn't even want to deal with me. So how much value am I really providing, right? Versus, Bill Gates, he created a computer system that gave computers to the entire world, created millions and millions of jobs, created hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue and tax revenue, all those things. And look how much value he created. And that's why he became the richest man in the world. So it's all about the value you provide to the world. And there might be people that don't like hearing that. because rich people are so greedy, but rich people provide value. Like, how could that rich person buy that $100,000 car, $200,000 car? What a waste. But how many jobs did that create? How many people ate because of him buying that car, right? So it's all we get paid for the value we provide. So anyway, I learned that, and that's why I had to move outside of my job. That's why I want to continue to kind of pound on that point. Is I want people to realize if you want to make more money, you have to figure out how to provide more value.
It reminds me of another video that you did. It was called "How to Think Like a CEO and Change Your Life: Five Easy Steps." And one of the things that you said was taking complete charge of your own life. And it seems like that's something that a lot of people are on autopilot, and they're not really in charge of their own life. Most of their life decisions are made for them. And it seems like we need to take charge of our own life before we can figure out what that value that we have is to contribute.
Yeah, I mean that's another big problem that we have with our system today is they always want to tell people like it's not your fault, you're a victim, whatever. But that's just not true, and that perpetuates the problem, right? So at the end of the day, we have to realize that okay, maybe it wasn't my fault that I'm in this situation. It was due to my circumstances where I was born or whatever. But moving forward, it's on me. And if I can't at least accept responsibility for getting myself out of whatever situation I'm in today, I'm just never gonna do anything, right? I have to accept that I can be the master of my fate and I can take responsibility. And so that's a big piece. And you bring up those two videos. It's funny because all my videos have been about investing. But I just realized that investing is about what you do. So you need to make money. You need to save money. You need to live. And then with the money you have left over, you should be investing. You have to invest. It's the only way to get ahead in life. But what do you do before you invest? And so I started dropping these other videos that you mentioned, the how to be like a CEO and why I quit my job or how I quit my job. And so it's cool that you bring those up, but just trying to get people to get to the point where they can invest.
And when it comes to taking complete charge of your life, I'd ask, what do you believe that looks like? What is the difference between a person who's taking complete charge of their life and can now chart their own course and the person who is not? Like, what is that missing link?
Well, it really starts with just the mindset, right? So it's the victim mentality, like, oh, woe was me. I just only have this job and I can't find another job and I can't, whatever. Versus like, I can't find a job because of the skills that I have. But if I could learn new skills, I could go make money on my own, or I could get another job, right? So it's just that mindset of like, oh, woe is me. I'm just a victim and I'll just be here because I used to be in the logging industry and now all the logging industry is gone and now there's no jobs in my town. I'm a victim. And it's true. You're a victim to that circumstance, but you don't have to remain that way. You can learn a new skill and you can move somewhere else. And so really it starts with just that mind shift. And that's where I was with that Be a CEO video. And people are like, well, how can I be like a CEO? I'm an employee, or I'm not even employed. And what I said was like, if you think about a CEO, right? What does a CEO do, right? They control the sales of the company, right? They're in charge of all these areas, like the sales of the company. That's the revenue. They're in charge of the marketing, like what's the message of the company. They're in charge with like, R&D, like product development. They're in charge of, accounting, right? Well, you're a CEO, you're the same way, right? So like you're responsible for your marketing. What is your message? How do you look? What's your appearance like? What are you talking? How are you talking? What's your social media? That's your marketing. You're a CEO that's responsible for sales and revenue. What's your sales? What's your income? Well, that's my job. Are you happy with that? Do you need more sales? Or maybe it's R&D, right? If a company only has one product they're selling, they need to develop more products. So what's your product? What's your skill? I should invest more into R&D. I should invest more into my skills so I can have additional skills and products, right? And so really, if you look at your life just like a CEO looks at a business, you have marketing, you have sales, you have R&D, product development, et cetera. And so I guess that takes it a little bit deeper. Once you've decided to change your mind and to take responsibility, then those are the areas that you would look into.
Yeah, I've always thought imagine that you were somebody you were coaching, and what would you say to yourself? And, Joe Rogan, the great podcaster, he likes to say, imagine that a film crew was walking around following you. Like everything you were doing was part of a documentary about how you became great, how you keep doing more and more, So one thing about you made a lot of money, then you lost a lot of money. And I wonder, that moment that you lost a lot of money, I imagine you were in debt at that point. You didn't really have an income. Did you freak out at that moment? Like, what was that moment like? Did you freak out and lose it for a while, or did you just become focused and get back to work?
Well, I mean, it wasn't like a light switch moment where it happened, overnight. It happened, over the course of like a year, right? You're trying to save it, trying to save it, trying to save it, trying to save it. Then you realize you can't save it. And then, so it's kind of a process, but, I think you go through like the different layers of like grief, right? So like disbelief and anger and like all those things. But, at that point you have, two options, right? I guess you can just like quit and cry and go away, or you can try and like, put it back together. I would say that a little bit more about me besides business is I'm an action sports guy. I grew up in the action sports industry. I grew up racing dirt bikes. I kind of chased a career trying to be a pro snowboarder. I chased giant waves all around the world still. And I say those things just because like maybe my personality is more risk adverse than other people. I've broken all the limbs in my body. I've broken my back. I have metal in my arms and legs. And so I'm used to like hitting that big jump and then coming up short and going to the hospital, having surgery. And then I get back on the dirt bike and I hit the jump again. So, I say that just because, I have a lot of friends in that real estate niche at that time who lost everything like I did, and they've never been able to recover. Mentally they were just so devastated that they just haven't been able to ever kind of put the boots back on. And so for me, it was just like, well, I just got out of the hospital. I just had my legs screwed back together, and let me just dust this off and like, let's just get back to work. Right. So I guess that was my attitude. That was my mindset. And, I guess I had already taken that responsibility because I'd been, my own entrepreneur for a decade at that point. So, that was my mindset, and that's what I had to do.
I like that, because most people, after a good failure, they give up. It kind of gets they almost get a form of PTSD. It's stuck in their hippocampus, and whenever they want to take risk again, they never even get close to it because they're like, well, I risked and I lost, so I'm afraid of risk now.
Yeah, it happens all the time. As a matter of fact, my parents, when I was a kid, they had bought a piece of real estate to fix it up and sell it. When I was just a kid, I kind of barely remember it, and it didn't go good. They lost their money, and they never touched real estate ever again. And so when I started doing it, they wanted to tell me how dangerous it was and how they lost all their money, but they only tried one time. And so, now I consult with a lot of people starting businesses, and usually like they'll be like, but this could happen and this is going to happen. And what about if this happens? And I say, yeah, it will. All those things are going to happen. They will. Are you going to be okay with that? And it's just like, you have to just know that that's just part of the course. And I like to say what I do is I like to say I fail fast. So like, I know that like to get this new marketing program off the ground and this new investing strategy perfected, like it's going to fail, and it's going to fail over and over. And so I want to fail fast so I can just keep going until I find something that works. And so you just have to accept that that's just life. And, there's a quote that I saw, it's not my quote, and it said, they say 9 out of 10 businesses fail. That's why I started 10.
Exactly. Well, I love the notion of fail faster. I think that's very important. I know we use it around here. Some things aren't going to work, so yeah, you got to let them go. It didn't work, let it go, forget it. Just be wiser. Just take the wisdom with you and let the failure go.
Yeah, and that's a good thing, right? So you may have seen, a lot of people have probably seen the meme, right? And it says like, I never lose, either I win or I learn. And so, right, if we don't win, then we lose, but we're not losing, we're learning. And the point that makes that really work, though, is let's just say, for example, that I wanted to become this like online marketing guy and make money selling products online, let's just say. And as long as I'm starting projects that are getting me to that goal and I'm failing, they're still helping me learn to get towards that goal. But if I go start like a construction job and I fail at that, that's not really helping me get to my ultimate goal. So for sure, you're going to learn stuff from that you can use later, for sure. And you should anyway. But it really helps if you've outlined where you're ultimately trying to go, and then you're making sure that whatever you're trying to do is always still learning in towards that ultimate goal.
Yeah, it's good to have a heading, have a current that you're going towards. And, well, one thing about failure reminds me of what special forces in the military says. They'll say, well, we're all going to die eventually. We're going to be unlucky one day. So let's just do it right now. Just imagine that, go there and just get it done. Just die today, and then don't ever worry about it again.
Right.
Just get that fear of failure, that fear of death out of the way. Well, it reminds me of something that you said. You posted on Facebook an image, and then you said, don't get down if you had a bad year or made some mistakes. A smooth sea never made a skillful sailor.
Yeah.
And it seems like 2018, especially for the crypto crew, not everybody, but for many, was definitely a bad year that I hope right about now people are starting to recover from. Confidence is returning to that market. Do you think we're getting confidence? Do you think it's going to get more interesting now? Because definitely a lot of people have quit, but the people who haven't they're really hardcore. I mean, they stuck it out.
Well, one thing that I learned in the real estate market, so I started my career coming out of a bear market, so at the bottom of a bear market, and then I had to, unfortunately, live through the worst real estate crash we've ever had. And what I learned through that, and then I also started an internet business in 2001, and I invested through the dot-com boom and crash. And what I learned through those things is that there really is no good and bad timing. There's good and bad strategies. So you need to change your strategy for the timing. So, the crypto markets, specifically Bitcoin, we'll say it's been around the longest. Over the last 10 years, it's been hands down, going away, the best investment in the entire world, period. Over the last 10 years, over the last 8 years, over the last 5 years, over the last 3 years, over the last 2 years. Over the last year, it hasn't been. Over the last year, it sucked. Right? So, but what's your time frame? What's your time period? You can look at any market, look at the stock market, and you can find horrible periods and you can find great periods. So really you have to, so with the stock market, what do they always say? Well, over the last 30 years, it's averaged 8%. They're not telling you over the last 8 months what it's done. It's over the last 30 years. So you have to have that long range perspective. And that goes for all things in life. To be healthy. What's my long range perspective on health? Like, if my goal is to be healthy when I'm 100 and live to 100, that changes what I do today. What's my long-range perspective of my business? What's my long-range perspective on investing? And so nobody puts money into their 401k or mutual fund expecting to get rich and retire next year. They do that for 20 or 30 years, right? And so somehow I think the crypto space got this weird notion, and it's because of what happened in 2017, that I could just jump in and magically I'll double, triple my money in a month or two, and that's just not reality. I think that will happen again probably in another 2 years, 3 years, but it's not normal. It's not real. And that only happens right before the crash. So anyway, over the last year it sucked, but there were strategies that worked. So obviously short selling worked really well, right? Trading worked pretty good, right? So trading worked really good. Short selling worked really good. If you wanted to buy in January of 2018 and hold till December of 2018, that strategy did not work for you.
Yeah.
If I wanted to buy in January of 2018 and sell in January of 2025, that strategy will probably work really good.
Yeah, it'd be hard to imagine it not. Of course, maybe it won't, maybe it wouldn't, but we could project and say it most likely will. So, something you mentioned health, and something I thought I'd ask you about is, have you noticed that well, for one thing, you are in shape. If people are watching, they can see that. If they're listening, well, just trust me, Mark is in shape. So, and I've noticed that many successful people are emphatic about getting to the gym daily. And so it seems like to put out the content that you're putting out, because you're putting out great YouTube content, you're putting out great content. So it seems like the entrepreneurial individual really has to run at 11, where maybe that only goes to 10, but you got to crank it up to 11. You got to have more energy, I think, than the average person to actually create, to keep putting content out there. And you're getting quality content out for sure. So, what do you feel that fitness is important to success?
100%. And actually, there's 4 areas. So there's 4 areas of your life that you need to be focusing on and growing on in order to be what I would consider success. So 1, you need to have health. Without health, you have nothing, right? And I need to have energy. I need to have focus, et cetera. I need to have money. Without money, what can I do? I can't do anything. But I need to have good relationships. If my family, if I'm going through like a crazy divorce and a separation, my kids hate me, everything else is going to suffer. And then I have to be good internally, spiritually, with myself. I have to, be centered. And what happens is, most people, maybe they're like, they make a ton of money, but their relationships are crap and they're 300 pounds. Right. Or maybe they're good on two. Maybe they're super healthy and they made a lot of money, but they're divorced and their kids hate them. Right. Or, and I can go on and on with variations, but really when all four work together, they magnify each other. So when I know that I have a family supporting me and loving me at home, and my health is firing and I have energy and I have money, now I can go do anything. You see what I'm saying? So they all build on each other. And it's kind of like you mentioned working out. So like if you don't work out, maybe you don't know, but like most people go to the gym and they want to work the vanity muscles. I want to do my bench press and my curls. Well, what you don't know is that if you don't work your legs out, your upper body will stop growing. You have to work your legs. It's an anabolic exercise to build your frame so that then your upper body can grow. And so that's kind of the way I look at it. Like if I neglect my health, my business will suffer. If I neglect my relationships. So anyway, those are the four areas. I think they all work together at the same time.
Oh, they definitely do. And I have to say that you mentioned that in one of your YouTubes, and it reminded me at the gym to start working my legs again, because I hadn't been, because you figure you walk around, you use them all the time, you go hiking and such, so you figure, they're fine. But it's true, without that squat, and that deadlift, it's, your body stops growing. It seems like nothing tells your body to start getting big more than squatting, at least I think.
Yeah. And, I think there's definitely times where we're out of balance. So it's maybe they're not all for 25%. So maybe I'm really working on my business more right now, but I need to make sure that my relationships don't die. If I was, I'm married and I have kids, but if I was going through a divorce, like I would be emotionally in a tough spot and my work would suffer. If I was divorced and I was single again, then I'm going to be going out, I'm on the prowl, right? And that's going to take away from my business, right? So you can just kind of see the relationship that all of those play together.
Definitely. And it's good to have that balance and be thinking about it, because when we get off balance, that's not healthy. Like one thing I see amongst entrepreneurial people here, like in Scottsdale, is you'll see a lot believe that you have to be uptight, emphatic, not sleeping, super driven, and I think to myself, gosh, if you would just look at your mental stability on a daily basis, you'd realize that I need to pull it together a little bit. But without
I think life is about being out of balance. So, for example, if I want to do a triathlon, I'm going to be out of balance on training for a little while. If I'm trying to launch this new product in my business, I'm going to be out of balance working for a little bit. Right. So it's okay to be out of balance, but just make sure those other areas don't die and you're just aware of it so you can kind of get back to it at some point.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. Well, it's good to have that in mind so that you can measure and that an individual can know when they're out of balance. Because if you know you're out of balance, well, then you're just sort of, then you're not really out of balance, are you? You're
and I think that's like a big question that's always asked by, you see like people ask like, more famous influencers or content creators, like, how do you find the balance, right? How do you find the balance? And I think you don't. Life's about being out of balance, but being aware of it, like you said, maintaining that relationship still.
No, I get it. I mean, because, you might have a week or a month where you're definitely far out of balance, completely out of balance. But just that awareness, you realize, like, I'm going to pull that back in and get balanced again. Yeah, so it seems like for an individual to have that aspect of discipline to, what is balance for them, note that, and where are you at? Kind of have a spreadsheet that makes a graph so you can see, oh, wow, the last 3 months I've been, completely out of balance,
Yep.
But it's okay because also that you look at like has Bitcoin performed well in 2018? Depends on how you look at it. So out of balance. But if you look at it over the last 10 years, it's been a great investment. So yeah, you could have a few months out of your year that are crappy, or even a year that are way out of balance. But if you're aware of it and you're measuring it, I guess to measure is to know. And to me, it's just it's an important aspect of things.
For sure. And again, going back to the Bitcoin thing, right? It's all about that perspective, right? And I just think it's just everybody got just way irrational, and it was like you just wouldn't buy a piece of real estate and expect it to triple in value in 12 months. You wouldn't buy anything. You wouldn't buy a 401k, a mutual fund. You wouldn't expect that from anything. You would expect to do it for years. You wouldn't buy Apple stock and expect to triple in a month or whatever. So anyway, I think and the big key, and this is what I should actually say, because this is what's really important, is that, Bitcoin, blockchain, is a brand new technology. All right. It's a technology. The internet was a technology that allowed us to share information. The automobile was a technology that allowed us to, drive around in cars. There's been 5 technology revolutions in the last 200 years. Steam engines, railroads, automobiles, telecommunications, and now we're going into this one. And they all work very similar. They all have like 4 phases of adoption. And when you invest in a technology cycle, a new technology, it's way different than investing in anything else. Just like investing in real estate is different than investing in stocks, or different than investing in gold. They all need their own strategy. And investing in a new technology cycle works differently. And that's what you're investing into. And so you have to kind of understand how that works.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I think a lot of people they intuitively know that decentralized currency, that Bitcoin and other cryptos are a good idea, and they wanted to get involved. And of course, the market was really good, so it looked like a great time to get involved. And then, well, the market kind of dropped in 2018. So it's a strange situation where people are very excited to get into something new, yet it seems like those who did in 2017, they're still happy they got involved, but they're down.
So let me explain that, right? So first of all, if I may, you've mentioned my videos quite a few times.
Yes.
I have a video called Wealth Cycles. It's actually a 3-part series, but if you look at the first one, I really break this down, and there's actually like a 9 or 10 page guide you can download that walks you through this whole process. I'm going to go through a pretty high level, but you understanding what happens in a technology cycle is that, first you have these guys in their garage, like developing this technology, nobody knows about it. And then people start hearing about it and they start getting into it. And then it creates this frenzy. Everybody gets super excited about it. And then the price goes parabolic and it goes crazy. So the price, or I should say the perception, goes really high, but the reality is the technology and the adoption just isn't there. And then reality sets in, right? We can ignore reality, but we can't get away from the effects of reality. So eventually the reality sets in and goes, wait a minute, market. The reality is not way up high where you've priced it. The reality is actually way down here. The technology hasn't even got adopted. And then the price crashes down. But it doesn't catch up to reality. It overshoots it. Perception goes too low. And that's where we are today. And an illustration of this is the dot-com boom is a great example. So Amazon went public in 97 for $1. It started taking off, and then by 2000, it's like, oh my gosh, e-commerce, this internet technology is going to be amazing. We're going to buy all these things online, and we're not going to have to go to stores, and they're just going to ship stuff to our house, and I'm going to buy. And Amazon stock went to $80. But then that was perception. But then reality set in. Wait a minute. We can't even use the internet. We in 2000, it was dial-up. It's too slow. I can't buy anything online. This whole thing's a joke. It's never going to work. The internet's never going to scale. And then perception shot down, and Amazon crashed from $80 down to $5. But it wasn't that internet technology was never going to work. It wasn't that we were never going to buy stuff online. It wasn't ready yet. We didn't have broadband internet until 2003. Once broadband internet came, then the internet got fast enough, and then it started to scale. And then just a few months ago, Amazon hit 2,000. And so that's kind of where we're at, right? Everyone got super excited about this new technology, blockchain, Bitcoin, whatever, but the price got way out of hand. But wait a minute. The reality is we can't really use it today. The reality is we have tax situations we have to deal with. Merchants aren't accepting it. Regulations aren't there. That's the reality. So boom, the price crashes back down. But knowing how these cycles work is our advantage. So when perception gets above reality, that's when you want to sell. And when perception gets below reality, that's when you want to buy. And that's where we are today. And then eventually it just continues to repeat, right? It's going to overshoot reality and be too high. And it's just going to go on and on.
Definitely. And a person can look at a technical analysis chart, and you can see, if you look at Bitcoin since its inception and look at today, it's been up and down and up and down and up and down like every other asset that exists, really.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I wanted to touch on is cryptocurrency. Let's just say Bitcoin as a peaceful revolution. Jimmy Song suggests Bitcoin as a tool for peaceful revolution recently he was speaking to BitConnect News. But I was going to mention one of your YouTubes again. It was Wealth Transfer Part 3, the key to protecting wealth in the next financial crash. One of the things that you mentioned was, I think through that series, but especially there, you mentioned we're a nation of war and welfare. And if we could, like to talk about how a decentralized, currency like crypto, which has a set amount, like here's how much Bitcoin there will ever be, and then that scarcity creates value. And Bitcoin, to me, it's a very peaceful revolution because there's no force being used here. It's an invitation. Would you like to be involved in crypto? Well, then you can. It's not like a government forcing a fiat currency on people and then, kind of trying to central plan it continually to actually have value and such. So what does crypto offer, if you want to go into that, on really a peaceful revolution, taking control away from centralized financial systems and governments so that we're not simply a culture of war and welfare, basically, but, prosperity?
I would love to go into that because that is the reason that I got into Bitcoin in the first place. And that is the reason why I started talking about it because of that exact question. So yeah, that's my entire reason for being in the space. So you have to get super high level, but basically, I'm going to take you back to the Roman Empire, and they tried to take over the world. They tried to build an empire, and what happened is obviously to continue these wars and build an empire gets very expensive. They got to pay the soldiers, and they have to pay to occupy the space, and they have to pay to rebuild the space, right? So it's super expensive, and they ran out of money. So they said, "Ooh, I know what we can do. We're going to take our 100% silver coin and turn it into 90% silver. Then we can inflate our money supply by 10%." That worked really good, and we had more war. But now we need more money. So now it's 80% silver. Now we have more war. Now 70%, 60%. And over 200 years, they devalued their currency by 90%. So what happens is you hear the government talk about, we need more inflation, right? So when you inflate the money supply, the more of anything, the less they're worth. If there's something very scarce, it's valuable, and the more there is, it's less valuable. So when there was more silver coins, they were worth less and less, and that's what's happening. And then moving forward, in about the 1400s, the entire world got onto gold being the kind of medium of exchange, and they all had like a uniform coin size. And then we had hundreds of years of prosperity. Because the whole world could freely trade and could specialize in what they're doing. It created enormous prosperity for hundreds of years. And then we go all the way to then the central bank, the Bank of England was formed. That was the first central bank. And then we went into World War I. And what happened? Well, the Bank of England were inflating their money supply, devaluing their currency so they could war. And they were war. And they devalued their currency so much the United States got on board because, JP Morgan and the United States bankers started loaning money to them so they could continue to fund the war. And then they were selling them weapons, and they were just all funding war. And then eventually they went broke. The United States entered the Bretton Woods Agreement. The United States dollar took over as the world reserve currency. And now the United States is in a constant state of war and empire building. And how do we do that? By inflating our money supply, devaluing our currency. So all this war is caused by devaluing the currency, inflating the money supply to fight this. Right? The government, right? The U.S. government's $22 trillion in debt. If they couldn't make money out of thin air, they couldn't keep fighting war. Right? It's very simple. And it all comes from having a money supply that can be manipulated. I can print as much of it as I want. And what that does is two things. One, it allows all this distortion where they can create these wars and do all these things that I don't like, and maybe you don't like either. But what it really does is it steals money out of your pocket. So you probably hear in 1971, the average wage was $40,000. But in today's money, that's this. They always throw that around. In today's money, what does that even mean? What that means is that it would be worth a lot more money today if they hadn't devalued your currency. So if I put $50,000 in, let's say in 1950, I had $50,000 in the bank, and that was enough to buy the average home, the medium home in the United States. If I never touched that money and that $50,000 sat there in the bank, how much home could I buy today? I could buy like a fraction of a home today. Why? Well, the 50,000 is still 50,000. That's because homes got more expensive. No, it's not. It's because those dollars don't have the value. They don't buy as much as they do today. So they're stealing money away from us, and they're perpetuating these wars. And so we get to Bitcoin, and Bitcoin goes back to like a gold standard where we have a fixed monetary supply that can't be inflated or manipulated. And what that can do is that can put everybody in check, right? Almost every problem in society, from the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer, unequal opportunity, monopolies, all these things all come from having a fake money supply. And so going to Bitcoin with a sound money supply can fix all those things. And so when I learned about this revolution, I'm like, I'm all in, and I want to tell everybody I know about this so everybody can get involved.
No, I get you. And I think that's perfect. Really, that's my reason for being involved in crypto. Well, one, yes, of course, I can make some money doing it, and I do. But besides that, I do believe it is the peaceful revolution. I think it might be the best political act one can do. Because I look at, it's very true. When governments can't print money, they can't fight wars, and that's a good thing. I like that. And also,
and like you said, it's peaceful, right? So like we can vote, but whether you voted for Trump or Hillary, I mean, come on, the warfare state's going to continue. So what I can do is I can vote with my money, and I can just take money out of the system, right? So it's not even voting, it's not even opting in. What it is it's opting out.
Definitely, it's opting out, and it's getting involved in something where you truly can have a peaceful revolution. You can change the world for the better. You can empower people, disempower centralized government and financial institutions, and you don't need force, because oftentimes we'll hear revolutionaries say, well, I have this great idea, but I need force. I need to kill a lot of people to make this happen. And so far in human history, it hasn't worked. Empires have come and gone. But so to me, there's something very special and unique at this moment in time with cryptocurrency, where it is the peaceful revolution that goes without force. And it's something like you mentioned in a video was, could anyone fight the iPhone? The iPhone came, it didn't exist, and then it existed, and now everybody has, an iPhone or a different type of smartphone. And what was the opposition to that? It's almost like a real moment when it comes, it overpowers.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's great. A great point. I grew up in a pretty kind of like political home. My parents were pretty engaged, and so I grew up that way. And obviously, that shaped my views. But I got to the point, where I was just like so disillusioned with the whole system, and I mean, the future, the writing on the wall is on the wall. We kind of know where things are headed. But I got to the point where I'm like, I'm just so over the political system. Like, there's nothing I can do. Eventually, if we have martial law, they're going to try and take away guns. We're going to have like a civil war. And I told my wife, like, I'm not going to be a freedom fighter. Like, there's no point in that. But all of a sudden, when I learned about Bitcoin, I was like, now we actually have a tool. Okay. And like you said, it's peaceful. I don't want to be a freedom fighter, but if there's a peaceful option for me that can give me a tool, then I'm all in. And that's why I am.
Definitely. And it creates to me a great sense of urgency, and it creates a sense of passion and purpose, because when we mention that term, civil war, like here in the country, well, who are you going to fight? Who's fighting who? What does that even look like? It doesn't look good. And I don't want, and I don't want that to happen, because it'd be just a disaster. I mean, and you can look historically, well, what happens to the people who lost? Well, we know what happens in history. So bad scene, not good, no good side to that. But yet we have this passion, we want to do something. And it's like, so to me, that helps me just double, triple, quadruple down on cryptocurrency and being involved, because I want to stop war, and I want to stop America from having a civil war or anything bad happen to it. And I think that even though maybe the government won't like being decentralized, it can feel a little pain for a change instead of the people.
Yeah, and I think it's something that can't be stopped, right? So there was another video I did on the pendulum, and basically I made the case that there's this pendulum where every 40 years the world goes from a me cycle, me individualism, decentralization, to a we cycle, which is we centralization, globalization, and this has been traced back for thousands of years. And we've been moving towards a centralized pendulum swing since the end of World War II, and it's just maxing out right now. And now the pendulum is going to start swinging back to a decentralization. And we can see that with Brexit, saying, I want out of the EU. We want our sovereignty back. We're decentralizing. We see it in Paris. Same thing, what they're talking about. They're rejecting globalization. In the U.S. with, Donald Trump rejecting establishment. And so the whole world is pushing back and trying to move back to decentralization. And then at the same time, we have a technology that's now enabling that to happen. And so you add those two together, and it's going to be a very, very massive force that the government's just not going to be able to stop, right? They're going to try, but that's just the way the world is working. And I think, where I think what's going to happen, and this is more big picture kind of futuristic stuff, is that if you think about the internet is a technology, just like blockchain is a technology. The internet technology allows us to share information. So Uber is a internet company, and Zillow or Facebook is an internet company. They're nothing alike, but they use internet technology. Blockchain is a technology now, but instead of sharing information, now we can share value, money, intellectual property, smart contracts, etc. Right? So we share value. So internet was information. Blockchain is value. So think about this. Before the internet, we looked at information as my morning newspaper or my evening news. That's where I got information. So when I thought about information, I just thought, oh, I get it in my morning newspaper or I get it in my evening news. Evening news is 3 network television, and the newspaper is controlled by a couple companies, and that's it. It was centrally controlled information. And the internet came along, and it allowed us to share information freely. And today, information is everywhere. Everywhere I look, my car has heads-up display and it's got information. My refrigerator has the weather on it. On Twitter, I don't even watch the news anymore. I don't even read the newspaper anymore because I get information everywhere now. And now the way that we even think and look at information has changed. Information's everything now, right? It's the information age. Now, newspapers didn't go away. They're still there, but they're just much less relevant today than they were. And that's exactly what I see happening. Today, we look at money as like currency, as dollars. But money is a communication of value. It's a tool to communicate value. And what I believe is going to happen is that with blockchain technology, it allows us to tokenize all assets. Hotels will be tokenized, stocks will be tokenized, companies will be tokenized, my hard drive space will be tokenized, my extra bandwidth will be tokenized, and everything will become tokenized and then will be freely exchangeable. And what I believe, fast forward 10 years, what the internet did to information by decentralizing and freeing it, the blockchain space will do to value. And we'll be in a world where value will be all around us and freely exchanged like information is today, and money as in currency, as in fiat currency, what the government's going to try and control will still be there, but it's just going to be much less relevant than it was.
It'll be retro, like a record, like an LP,
Like a newspaper. Do you still read those things?
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. It'll become nostalgic.
And we inherently know this, right? We're born knowing this, right? So like I have a little kid in elementary school, and on the playground they're trading chips for crackers, or I'll trade my bologna sandwich for your chicken sandwich, right? They're trading Pokemon cards. They can assign value. In jail, they're using cigarettes or whatever. So we know this, and in places where the currencies crash really hard, they're trading batteries for water or whatever, right? So we inherently know this, but as we go through the system and jobs and taxes, we tend to think, oh, well, money is only dollars. But that's just not the way it is. And so eventually we'll go into this massive Bitcoin blockchain barter system. And yeah, money will be there, just be less relevant.
Yeah, it'll be nostalgic, fun thing to do once in a while at farmers markets. Well, Venezuela is a great case because you've got their currency's done, basically, and crypto is happening there. So you really can't stop humanity, you can't stop commerce, you can't stop progress. So ultimately, crypto is just the natural next step, and we can see in countries where their currency has failed that it just takes right over.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think we'll ever see voting in America on the blockchain?
I would say almost for certain, yes. I think I'm a fundamental investor, so I like to look for macro trends, and I believe they give us really clear pictures of the future. The problem is always timing. We don't know when those things are going to happen. Sometimes they happen faster, some slower. But I think for sure, I think it's a perfect application of the technology. So I would say yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned the book The Pendulum. I'm actually about a third of the way through that, and that is absolutely fascinating how they actually hooked into these 40-year cycles over and over again through history, and it's really eerie how accurate it is. And so it seems like with I guess we're returning more into the me and into the individualistic power right now is where we're swinging towards.
Right.
Yeah.
It's actually not that weird, right? It's just human psychology. So people get fed up with one thing and then they want something else. And then you have that for so long, you get fed up with that, and then you want the opposite, right? So it's just going from one side to the other over and over and over.
Yeah, it truly is the pendulum effect. It's powerful. Well, right now the establishment, I should say, right now the established financial world, banks and governments and such, are spreading a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. FUD, as the lingo goes.
Right.
And there's reasons they do that. In some cases, it's, ignorance. They don't know. In some cases, it's financial interest. They want to stay on top. They want to keep their dominance. But it does seem that the crypto revolution can think a lot quicker, a lot faster, can move a lot quicker. And it seems that we have this dinosaur, the old institutions, that's kind of trudging along. Very dangerous. It can wipe you out. But we're like, I don't know, like little ninjas on dirt bikes, It's like we're really hard for the dinosaur to deal with. So where do you see do you have some examples of where you see the crypto, the peaceful crypto revolution actually winning, moving faster than the institutions can even handle?
They already did, right? That was the whole ICO boom before the SEC could even figure out what was going on. It's a dangerous place, right? The government only continues to get bigger. There's thousands and thousands of new laws every single year. We have hundreds of lawmakers in Washington, and their only job is to make laws. Like, if they're not making laws, they're not doing their job. So we have thousands and thousands of new laws every year. And so it only drags on the economy and makes it worse. So today, crypto has all these regulations that it's trying to jump through. And ultimately, I'll pin this crash of 2018 on the SEC and the regulations. I think that's really what caused it. And they're dragging this whole thing down through regulations. And imagine if, someone wanted to create, Google, and they had to go before regulators and explain what they wanted to do and get all these approvals, but they have laws from 1915 that they're looking at, and they don't understand what Google is, and now they have to go before hearings and Google never would have happened. They need to allow innovation to happen, and so there's definitely some danger there, but I think it's already moved past that. And I think at the end of the day, what I said is they're going to try and control money as best as they can. Think about it. The bankers rule the world. You think the politicians rule the world? They don't. The bankers rule the world, and they do it by controlling the money. So if they lose control of the money, they lose control of everything. So they'll never let that go, and they control all the media, all the politicians, all the weapons, etc. But that's why I said earlier, I think it's money as we know it will change, and eventually, they'll control money, but money will just become less relevant. And that's where I see, and look at Kodak, right? Kodak was a 100-year-old plus company, behemoth, right? billion dollar company. And, they went out of business almost overnight with digital cameras. And strangely enough is that, Kodak actually invented the first digital camera. They just didn't think it was going to be a big enough market, and they shelved it. So, today we saw the BIS, which is the Bank of International Settlements, which is like the central bank of the central banks. It's kind of like the top of the heap. And they put out a report like in the last week, and they said that proof of work, Bitcoin proof of work is too slow. It'll never work. Too much energy. It needs to be completely rewritten. I'm like, great. Keep thinking that. Right? Keep thinking that. That way we can blindside you when it's, it'll be too late before you realize it.
Yeah, in my show notes, actually, I printed that tweet where, you replied, perfect. Their lack of understanding is perfect. Their lack of understanding is exactly what we want, for them not to view BTC as a threat until it's much too late.
Because that's exactly what happened with Kodak, right? They had the digital camera. They just thought it wasn't a threat. The market's too small. No one will ever use it. And so they shelved it. And then, of course, it killed them. And really, even if they would have shelved it, let's say that they would have said, we own the patent, we're shelving it, like let's say like the government, right? We're taking over digital cameras. No one will ever have a digital camera. Well, no digital cameras would have happened. But digital cameras isn't actually what put Kodak out of business. What put Kodak out of business was this. All of a sudden, Nokia shipped, 10 billion phones, and each one of them had a camera in it, and nobody needed a camera anymore. You see what I'm saying? They controlled if they would have controlled the digital camera, that would have been okay, but it still wouldn't have stopped it from happening.
Yeah, and an idea whose time has come is just so overwhelming. There's no way for the existing infrastructure to really stop it or deal with it. It's just kind of like a wave crashing on the beach. You really can't stop it. There was a video you did called How a Lack of Trust in Our Institutions Can Lead to Wealth. And an amazing point you brought up along the lines of this is 60, and this really inspired me, was, and I'll link all these in the show notes, these videos. You said 65 years after the Wright brothers' first flight at Kitty Hawk, we landed on the moon. I mean, that's, when you actually put that in perspective, you're like, holy crap.
And imagine before the Wright brothers were able to fly at Kitty Hawk, if they had to go down to the city and try and get permits.
Yeah.
Wait, you want to do what?
It never would have happened.
It never would have happened.
Yeah, so true. So as we wrap things up, I do want to ask, with cryptocurrency right now, a lot of people are getting involved. I mean, I know for myself, since I do crypto, anyone I ever come in contact with, almost 100% are interested, and they would say, how can I get involved? How can I get in some? How can I get in a safe way? And, well, I have certain things that I'll tell them how to, play it safe and get involved. But do you believe that cryptocurrency itself, this interest that people intuitively have, they know it's next, do you think it's actually educating the public, helping them realize, like, holy crap, our financial institutions are deadly, they're bad, and it's time for a change, a peaceful change? Only for the
early adopters. So, right, technology cycles have patterns and cycles, and so you have the early adopters, and they're the true believers. So for those early adopters and true believers, right, they're gonna like, man, the banking system's so bad, I'm gonna use this to defeat them. But for the majority to come in, they're gonna have to use it just because it's better. And we're definitely not in the better space right now. So eventually, to get the mass majority, to get the full adoption or the majority of the adoption, it's just going to have to be a better product. So my job, or what the challenge that I'm taking on is my whole campaign is why Bitcoin. I never try and tell you what Bitcoin is, and that's the first question people ask. I was on a show earlier today, and they wanted me to tell them all about it, what it is, how it works. And I said, can you tell me how your light comes on in your wall in your ceiling when you flip that switch? Can you tell me how this video is showing up on your screen when I'm talking to you? No, you can't. You don't need to know what it is and how it works. You need to know why. Why would you use video conferencing? Well, because I can see you without having to go to your house. Great. So understand why we want Bitcoin. And I think the education is definitely going to be the big piece to get the early adopters, the true believers. And then eventually the innovation and adoption will happen. And then we'll get to the mass majority, which will choose it because it's going to be better. And I think we're already getting there, right? Like Lightning Network is making leaps and bounds into scale and speed and cost. And so it's going to happen sooner than we think.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And if a person wants to know how blockchain works, wants to know exactly what Bitcoin is, just search it in YouTube. I guarantee you'll find, you'll learn if you want to know to any level of detail you might desire.
But how many people do you think got on YouTube and searched how the internet works?
11.
Right. Exactly my point, right? So, I mean, I'm all for it, and I'm all about education, so I'm definitely not discouraging anybody from doing that. But I just try to choose to put my focus on the education into why, right? The fear, the warmongering, right? Opting out, peaceful dissent, all those things. Not what, but I don't discourage it. If you want to search it, go for it.
Definitely. Well, the why of cryptocurrency is fairly more interesting. That is for sure, especially when you have a grand vision like it's a peaceful revolution. Well, something I'd like to,
and we have to, right? Because right now we're going to an inferior product. So right now it's slower, it's clunky, it's technical and complicated. There's not many places I can use it. There's risks that it could get stolen from me. There's lots of downside. I'm not going to downplay that, but there's lots of upside. It can't be confiscated. It can't be stolen. It can't be manipulated, right? So, and for me, the upside on those things is worth the risks of all those other problems. You see? So it's worth it to me. And so if we can teach other people why it's worth it to them, then I think we'll get that early stage adoption. And then the early stage adoption will bring the mass adoption when it's more ready for public consumption.
Absolutely perfect. That makes sense. Well, something that you mentioned in one of your videos was to get really wealthy, unfortunately, you have to be lucky. But we are all lucky. And if we could maybe end on that inspiring line, like, can you go into that slightly and then just tell us where we can find you, and definitely plug Signal Profits, because if you want to be involved in crypto, it's a great place to learn. Signal,
first of all,
Signal trading. Yeah, sorry.
First of all, thank you for watching so many of my videos. It's cool to hear them kind of have you pulling some nuggets out and bringing them up, because I'm like, man, those are actually some pretty good things. Like, so much time goes by. But anyway, yeah, back to that. So, you can be smart, you can work really hard, you can create a lot of value, and you can make a lot of money. You can make millions or tens of millions of dollars for sure. But to get truly wealthy, the Bill Gates wealth, the Bezos wealth, those types of guys, you have to be lucky. It's not about being smart and working hard. It's about being lucky. And that's the bad news. The good news is that we're lucky, because it all comes down to timing, right? So what I mean by that is, to get really wealthy, like generational wealthy, the Rockefellers, right, the et cetera, is about the way that those families get their wealth is through technology cycles. So, like I said, the steam engines, the railroads, the automobiles, the internet, each one of those created new families of wealth. It wasn't the same people that got wealthy over and over. It was new people every single time. So, and each new technology cycle pulls value from the previous technology. And that's why each one gets bigger and bigger. So, for example, Henry Ford was the richest man of his time, and he was worth about 160 million, which sounds small in today's numbers. That was in 1908, so that was a lot of money. But Bezos from Amazon is worth a billion or whatever, 80 billion or whatever it is, right? So each one builds more value, and so we have a brand new technology cycle starting. It's going to be a whole new wealth transfer, and so those that are a part of that wealth transfer are going to achieve that like lasting wealth, generational wealth, and you have to be lucky to be born in that cycle. Everyone who was in their 30s and 40s when the computer space first started going, in the 70s and 80s, basically all the people that are really, really wealthy, the billionaires of today, are all at the age where they could take advantage of that last tech cycle. And so today, if you're of age, if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever, and you can take advantage of this, it's your opportunity. So we're lucky with that.
We are all lucky. I believe that you make luck, and definitely we are in a lucky time. So,
well, you could be lucky to be born in the period and then never do anything about it. So you definitely have to make it for sure.
Oh, definitely.
What do they say? It's like where preparation and action come together or something like that. I forget, but
yeah. Well, if a person desires to be lucky, then they can just take advantage of this time. And so I guess to wrap it up, where can people get a hold of you? And definitely tell us a little bit about Signal Profits as we close up shop.
Yeah, sure. So you've mentioned a bunch of my buddies sound like good ideas or good topics. You can definitely follow me on YouTube it's just search Market Disruptors. I'm trying to give people the information they need to go out and disrupt all types of markets. I believe we're in this very disruptive space. Technology is going to allow us to do that. So if you want to get smart, learn how to disrupt markets, check out that channel. It's all education. I'm trying to teach people how to think and not what to think. I talk a lot about cryptocurrency investing and other stuff as well. And then if you're the kind of guy who wants to learn how to fish, but maybe you also just want some fish to eat right now as well, and you want more information from me, people always want to know, what coins are you buying right now? Or how should I set up my portfolio? Or what kind of strategy should I use right now? We do have a company called Signal Profits. You can go there, signalprofits.com. And whether you want to be a trader and actively buy and sell every day, or you want to just buy and hold long-term investing, we have kind of everything for you there, as well as training, how to buy, how to store, how to exchange, all that. You can get for $7. You get 14 days to check everything out, make some money before you have to commit to anything. That's Signal Profits. And then I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at #1 Mark Moss.
Definitely. And there's a lot of great content that Mark is kicking out, so definitely take advantage of it. All right. Well, thanks so much for being on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. It was actually really fun.
Oh, definitely.
You've done a lot of homework and asked a lot of different questions than I normally get to answer. So I appreciate that.
Thanks. It's a compliment. Yeah, we try to get more into like who this person is, why are they inspiring, than just necessarily what they do. So it's a great mix. Well, take care, and we'll have this up in a day or so.
Okay, thanks so much.
All right. Thanks for listening to Radiant Creators. Check out more content at radiantcreators.com. If you like the show, give it a like, share this, comment, keep the conversation going. You can also find us at alternatecurrentradio.com, where there's this show and a lot more.